JoshCast, dun, 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 dun. No, it's the podcast that you thought was dead. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, 'cause I missed a week last week. Da, 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 da. No, and everyone sighed a big relief. Dun, 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 dun. But it's not dead. Dun, 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 dun. But it's still alive. Dun, 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 dun. JoshCast. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, yes. I do want to apologize. I did miss last week. I don't know if that destroyed anyone's life. I doubt it. It might have improved things. I mean, actually, now that I think about it, I skipped last week, and Macron just got elected in France, and he's much more liberal, and he beat out the populist far-right Le Pen. Maybe it was because I didn't do the Flapcast. Maybe the JoshCast. Sorry. Flapcast is the other one I do. That one's fine. JoshCast, but because I didn't do the JoshCast, maybe that is why we have a moderate in France now as opposed to a far right-wing person in France. So you're welcome. That's what we'll say about that. I don't know. I've been feeling really awful about the stand-up I've been doing lately. Just it feels terrible. It all feels horrible and bad and terrible and wrong and just not fleshed out enough. And I think the problem is I want to talk about politics, but every time I talk about politics, I just feel like the audience is sitting there going, what do you know? What can you possibly know about politics? You don't have a degree in politics. You don't have any experience. And actually, now that I think about it, that means I could be president. Yes, actually, what that means is that I'm not really qualified to make jokes about politics, but I'm qualified to run in politics. That's what that means. That's exactly what that means. And I guess maybe the other problem, maybe I'm just not being smart enough in what I want to say about it. Because and what do I want to say about it? What do I want to say about politics right now? I'm just struck. I just feel like I'm seeing a ton of greed. And this goes beyond Democrat and Republican. It's just, I feel like everything I'm reading about is the result somehow of total greed. And I just don't understand why it's such a big deal for exorbitantly rich people to pay a little bit more so that poor people can have even mediocre health care. I don't see why there's such a fight. I don't get it. I do not understand it. And it seems like both sides have very sophisticated arguments, very sophisticated economic arguments either way, and there are experts on both sides who explain, well, this is why we should have a more socialized medicine system, and this is why we should not have a more socialized medicine system. And I'm thinking, does it really need to be this complicated? Here's what I know. I'm getting my testicles checked, as one does. And I have an infected right testicle and also an infected prostate. So I'm getting an ultrasound done on the testicle and the prostate. And the lovely lady who is scanning my testicle, scans my testicle and then moves the little ultrasound wand over 3 inches to scan my prostate. And I ask her, am I being charged per organ or area of the body that you are scanning? And she says yes. And I can't help but think that's horrible. That's horrible. Why charging per organ? Why is it an a la carte system? Why it does not have to be an a la carte system? It should not be an a la carte system. Why can't it? Wouldn't it be great if I didn't have to pay anything for that? If healthcare was a right as opposed to a privilege, that's what I'm looking for. That's what would be nice. Instead of having to, instead of trying to figure out how much a testicle is worth, because whatever it is, I can tell you based on the bill that I paid, that is way overpriced. That should have been, I think that my testicle, my particular right testicle at this point, I want to say it's worth about $15. It's it's the Timex of testicles. And the prostate, maybe 20 bucks, I want to say. That's what it's worth, not whatever I paid. Trust me. And I just wish that healthcare was a right and not a privilege. And I don't see why. I don't feel like that's impossible. I don't feel like that's impossible. I think that is totally within the realm of possibility somehow. In our current economic state, there is a way that we can get there. It has to be possible. I know it has to be possible because think about all those TV spin-offs that are out there. Enough people had to come together and say, we can make a spin-off of Friends starring Matt LeBlanc. Like that got accepted by several different people. And I feel like if we can make that happen, and it lasted for an entire season, that's profoundly amazing. If we can make that happen, somehow we can get universal health care. I know that it's possible. I absolutely know that it is possible. If we can get Vin Diesel, who at one point left the Fast and the Furious franchise, to come back to the franchise, we can get universal health care. I know that it is possible. Because I just see all this money that's being spent in all these bizarre places, and I'm thinking, if we have the money to do that, how do we not have the money for health care? How do we not have that? People, what do I see people doing? When I look at cars, take a car for an example. Take a Kia. I see a Kia, and I see a Kia with a spoiler, a little fin at the end of the Kia. Is that necessary? Is that really necessary? There was enough money on Earth to put a wing on a Kia. If we can do that, there's a way that we can do universal health care. How many testicles is that Kia spoiler worth? Probably not that many, now that I think about it. Probably not that many. So yeah, I guess I'm a big fat socialist. That's where I'm at. And yet, it seems like whenever socialism has been tried in many different countries, it just hasn't worked so well. Or it just hasn't been as good. But there's something, I don't know, the pure capitalism, there's something very emotionally cold about it to me. Just, you're a success or you're a failure, and there's always going to be successes and there's always going to be failures, and that's just capitalism. I feel like there's this Darwinism that's put on top of it that's very lacking in compassion. Very lacking in compassion. And, it'd be nice to see. I think if you want to be a total capitalist, and if you want to be a total capitalist and have no ounce of socialism in anything that you're doing, that's fine. But I think you should have to be poor for like a month, and really experience what that's like. And if you're okay with that, if you're okay with being in that place, and you genuinely think, okay, I'm incredibly poor, but I still believe in capitalism. That's one thing. But that, I guess, maybe what bothers me, if somebody is big on capitalism and they come from a humble place and they manage to actually succeed, that's one thing. But it's when someone, incredibly rich people who are born with a silver spoon in their mouth, are saying capitalism's so wonderful. Well, of course it is. It's like a T-Rex saying, "Oh, it's great to be a carnivore." Of course, if T-Rex would say. Then again, for all I know, maybe I gotta test that, because there might have been a lot of T-Rexes who were depressed. I bet you there was at least one T-Rex that had clinical depression, just walking around going, there has to be more than this. I envy the herbivores. I do, because there was probably one T-Rex that felt guilty about. There was one psychologically advanced T-Rex that was just saying, what is my purpose? Is this all I was put on Earth to do? I mean, if my hands were just a little bit bigger, I could be a painter. Although that's not true. I was reading about how there's this horse that was injured, and the owner started having the horse paint. Like, would put a paintbrush in the horse's mouth, and the horse would paint, and it was apparently very therapeutic. And the horse actually got better, and they were able to sell the horse's paintings, and they used the money from the horse's paintings to help the horse. And the horse has better health care than I do. And that's how bad the healthcare system is in this country. A horse has to become a painter in order to afford the medicine to help the horse. You know that the healthcare system is bad when the arts are a fallback. Apparently, they were analyzing the horse's paintings, and many people were comparing it to the works of Jackson Pollock. And all I could think of is, if Jackson Pollock were alive, would that really be the best thing that Jackson Pollock could hear? That they're comparing me to a horse's painting. He might take that as a huge compliment. I'm not sure. I think if a horse somehow started doing stand-up, and then somebody walked up and said, "Hey, we saw that horse the other night. It reminds me of your stand-up." I guess my follow-up question would be, well, how did the horse do? Did it kill? And if they said, yeah, it killed, then I'd feel honored. But if they said it, well, it was just kind of weird, and we went along with it because it was a horse, and there was a novelty. But beyond, in terms of actual technique, we weren't that impressed. Then I'd feel depressed if they were comparing a horse's stand-up to my stand-up. I would certainly feel bad about that. But that's the thing. I mean, the horse. I don't know. The horse probably, actually, in terms of where art is concerned, the horse is probably the perfect artist because the horse probably has no ego. The horse is painting for the sake of painting. Or there's another distinct possibility that occurred to me when I was reading this, is that maybe the horse is annoyed because all the horse really wants is the apple, but the owner will only give the horse the apple after the horse paints. And the horse is sitting there thinking, God, all these other horses get an apple whenever they want. I gotta fucking paint. It's a shame I used the curse word right there, because I don't want to go back and edit this. I feel like the curse word was unnecessary. I don't need to use that. It's just, I feel like it denigrated what was otherwise, dare I say, a genius of a podcast. I didn't do any transitions this time. I'll do a little song to indicate transitions. Oddly, I didn't do that. But I'm also thinking that I don't want to talk too much further because, I personally, when it comes, I can't stand podcasts, any of them. I hate them all. They're too long. I don't care. And so if anyone at this point is still listening, I feel like I want to get you on your way to the next thing you're doing, which should be going to see Guardians of the Galaxy, or perhaps making love to a beautiful man or woman or transgendered person, or anyone that's consensual. As long as what you're doing is consensual, you should be able to make love to whoever you want. Or inanimate objects. Now, technically, it wouldn't be consensual if you're making love to an inanimate object, but one can only assume that the inanimate object would not have the wherewithal to be concerned about it. This is the end of the podcast, the end of the podcast, and the children sing and the children play. This is the end of the podcast.